Great. Well, welcome everyone to today's session. My name is Darcy. I'm on the Youth Art Exchange Advisory Board. And I just wanted to do a brief little introduction in case you don't know about the Youth Art Summit or Youth Art Exchange. So the San Francisco Youth Art Summit is a project that's facilitated by Youth Art Exchange. It's an annual gathering of young artists and arts educators, and it's the only event of its kind in the Bay Area. The Youth Art Summit is a celebration of young artists and their vibrant contributions to the creative and cultural fabric of the Bay Area. This is our 10th year now with the event, and now more than ever, it's clear that art is essential for connection and reflection, social change, and building community, especially for youth. Youth Art Exchange exists to make sure that San Francisco public high school students have critical access to the arts. Our mission is to spark a shared creative practice between professional artists and public high school students, furthering youth as leaders, thinkers, and artists in San Francisco. We offer free multidisciplinary arts programs after school, in school, and during the summer. And our vision is that every public high school student in San Francisco will have access to meaningful, in-depth arts education that amplifies their voices. So just a little general housekeeping for today's session. Just to make sure you're in the right place today is the self-advocacy for teaching artists. So we encourage you to add your pronouns to your name, as well as a land acknowledgement. And if you have any questions during the event, feel free to put those into the chat. And then I am very pleased to introduce today the leader of our workshop, Miko Lee. Miko is the director of the Teaching Artists Guild, and she believes in the power of storytelling. She is the executive director of the Youth and Arts for over a decade, and before that was the Arts and Education Director for East Bay Center of the Performing Arts. Miko is a theater teaching artist. She has worked as a playwright, an actor, a director, a choreographer at theaters around the country, including Berkeley Rep, Seattle Rep, Public Theater, and Mark Taper Forum, and many others. Miko is also on the leadership team of Asian Americans for Civil Rights and Equality, on California's Special Education and Arts Working Group, and the Public Will Committee of Create California. Miko is a lead producer for Apex Express on KPFA Radio, which you can hear Thursday nights at 7 p.m. So Miko, go ahead and take it away.
Hello all and welcome. We're so glad that you joined us here today. Thumbs up if you can see my screen that says tag Teaching Artists Guild. Yay, excellent. I would love us just to take a moment to take a great big breath together. If you could all join me in taking one big breath in. Raise your hands up in the air and a breath out. One more time, a big breath in and raise your hands up and a breath out. And our very last time, a breath in and a breath out. I love you all as we just finished, Thanksgiving or Takesgiving, as many people call it. If you could acknowledge the native land that you are standing on right now. If you don't know, there's a link right there for native land in California. This is a map of the United States territories, excluding Hawaii, which is the land I am on right now, and I stand on the land of the Kanaki-Aui people. I'd love you to throw in the chat the lands that you are standing on right now so that we could recognize the past and future generations and be thinking about the next 7 generations in all of the work that we're doing. Thank you so much. So I am from Teaching Artists Guild. Let me move my pictures out of here. Let me see. Yeah, there we go. I don't see your beautiful faces, but I'm going to show you who we are, and then we're going to talk some. So we're Teaching Artists Guild. We're talking today about advocacy, but as the first thing, I just wanted to say, who we are. So one of the things I will say is that right now, Teaching Artists Guild, which started in California, is now a national organization, and we are just merging with Association of Teaching Artists in New York, so that we are actually an official 501c3 nonprofit. And what both organizations are about is making sure that teaching artists are pushed to the fore. We're recognizing our power, our strength in social justice teaching, and being able to utilize the superpower of teaching artists to really make change in the world that we're living in. So all of the art that I'm showing you today in these pictures are artists that are teaching artists, that are proud teaching artists, because that is who they are and what they believe in. A piece of what we do is really, over the many years, we help to define what is a teaching artist, because a lot of people said, what does that mean? I don't even get that. So many folks came together and created this manifesto, which we actually have posters of. And I'd love you to throw into the chat, in this manifesto that is on the right, that's entitled "We Are Teaching Artists," throw into chat kind of words that stand out to you. And we actually have posters of this and postcards of this. This was a collective effort that was made at a National Guild conference many years ago, with people just saying, okay, this is what we are. We're not just somebody that teaches in a school. We're somebody that teaches in an incarcerated facility. We're somebody that teaches with old folks and young folks, and working with firefighters, and working in multiple disciplines, and working in different places all around the world. So throw in the chat things that stand out to you. I'd love to think, what stands out? Is there anything missing? We really have this year even expanded the definition of teaching artistry to make sure that we're including cultural practitioners and traditional artists, because we really think it is about passing on the knowledge. That is really what helps to define us as a teaching artist, and somebody that's both a working artist and a working educator. So those are important qualities. I'm wondering if, because I'm presenting, I can't see the things that are in the chat. So I'm wondering if you can shout out, unmute yourself and shout out some of the things that you're seeing that stand out to you.
I can read off a couple of them as well. I see sharing.
That would be so great.
Yeah, I see sharing. I see, can you teach in a non-capitalist way? Make a living, celebration, that which makes us joyful, make change happen, we want change, collective work, bringing communities together, making art accessible to all.
Great, thank you for that, love that. I'll have a link to this available. It's actually on the TAG website, but for folks that want to add to that, that would be great. It is an iterative process like all of our work. So really, what are the things that TAG is doing? We are really about advocacy, as this workshop is, and the ways in which we do that are multiple ways. And I'm going to go over a few of those. One is our asset map. The others are pay rate calculator. And then it's really about spreading the knowledge through professional development. And I'm going to go over each of these things next. One is, I would love it if you have not entered your information into the TAG asset map, please do this. What this is an international map that teaching artists enter themselves into so that they can actually get hired. And we are building this out right now, but this is a really important component. What we've done is developed a map that is active and live, and you can enter your information into that, including your arts discipline and including where you are willing to work. Right now on the map, we're building out 2 more components. If you do online teaching and virtual teaching, and if you are willing to actually go and teach in pods. One of the things we're realizing during COVID times with the map is people are being hired all over the world to come in and teach in a different location. So for example, an organization in Iowa that was looking for artists that can teach jazz, and they didn't have them, was able to go onto the asset map and hire a teaching artist in Memphis, Tennessee, to be able to work in Iowa. So how cool is that? They're also getting an artist that is really highly skilled. I mean, in this time, you can get an artist that is almost in any discipline that can come and teach virtually for your students or for your program. So it's actually been this lovely tool that we have been using. The other thing that we are doing right now is developing out a region-based program. So if you look on our website, there's this thing called regional networks up here. And if you clicked on that, you would see right now the state of California has its own, because TAG is actually the regional network for California. And then you could see Iowa has one. You could see all these different places. Eventually we'll build this map up so that when you put yourself in the map, you will see, like where I am way over here in Hawaii, you would see, oh, when I click on and see Hawaii, my community is this. I reached out to these folks that right now are from University of Hawaii in Oahu. Those are the folks that you connect with to be able to make and build your community. In California, we have, 3 different places that you can link to based on where you are in California. So the whole idea of that is to build out these regional networks so that we can build a sense of community and strength in our advocacy. This has even happened internationally because we're part of the International Teaching Artist Conference, which just happened this last year. The amazing thing about that is instead of being 300 people at a conference, there was over 2,000 at the last international conference. And that is such a joy that so many people can be able to come together. But they use it in ITAC to be able to pull folks and organize in a specific community. So they went to South Africa and said, okay, we're going to organize teaching artists here. The first thing you do is put your information in the asset map. And I am encouraging you all to go here and put yourself on the map. One of the things this last year during the pandemic we were doing is trying to actually create policy around multiple ways to include teaching artists in mapping out and providing funding and making sure that teaching artists are included. And what we found is that we didn't have enough data. So right now what we're trying to do is grab as many teaching artists and put them on this so that we can get an aggregate sense of how many teaching artists there are and what is missing in each of those communities. So that's a really big, I encourage you, please go in there, put out your information. And if you work for an organization, your organization can also be a part of that. We encourage that as well, to have both sides of that. Get work. It's a great thing. And eventually we will build this out so that individual teaching artists can attain funding for themselves through this site. That's what we're working on right now. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. We also have on this handy dandy tool called this pay rate calculator. This was also, everything on TAG has been and will be developed by and for teaching artists. This started with a group of us meeting together at a National Guild conference saying, how much are you making? I don't know, how much are you making? And everybody talking about how varied their pay rates were all over the place. So we said, what if in one place we had everybody's pay rate? So we worked with an organization that does that looks at pay, and I will tell you that the calculations we use from this are relatively old. They're from 2018 now, so we know that's a little bit out of date, but still it works. You put in where you live and work, how many people are in your household, and how long you have been working, and then how big the organization is that you've been working for. If it's a really tiny one, like a mom and pop shop, a mom and mom shop, versus a huge Lincoln Center, that's very different on what their pay rate will be. And then you come up with the rate. And I will tell you, so I've been on both sides as both a teaching artist and running an organization. A lot of people say, wow, that's so much money, how do we do that? So some organizations use this straight up to be able to pay their teaching artists. So like Americans for the Arts, who has a bigger bank, they utilize that to be able to come up with their pay for their teaching artists because they can. That's great. Other folks use it as a negotiation tool. So TAMA, which is the teaching artists in the Mid-Atlantic, they use it as a baseline. So when they go in to negotiate their salaries, they say, well, according to the TAG pay rate calculator, I should be earning this. So what other benefits can you provide in lieu of this if you cannot match this rate? So they might give additional paid professional development. They might give paid time off. So utilize this. It is a tool that we created so that you can be able to negotiate your pay. I will say also that right now we are adding an element to collect the actuals, what you are actually making right now, that's only for your own benefit. So you could, for me, I would go and look at Miko. Okay, this is my rate that I earned right now. And then in the future, this is my rate, so that you can, for yourself, calculate how much you're earning over time. That will be private data just for you. However, in aggregate, in all of the data, we will collect that to say to the field, look, this is what teaching artists are, this is what they should be making, and this is what they are making right now. Look at how different that is. How do we shift that balance, and how do we advocate so teaching artists can actually make more? And I will say, I had a funder say to me, why is this important right now? Why is it important when so many people are in need? And my response was, yes, everybody is in need in COVID times. That is true. And teaching artists have been left on the back burner, and their pay has not been taken care of. And during COVID, we noticed that a lot of teaching artists were getting taken advantage of in terms of the videos. A lot of people, myself included, when the lockdown happened in March and everybody said, okay, go to online learning, most of us just said, I want to reach my students. So we immediately started making videos. But as a result, a lot of teaching artists were getting taken advantage of because those videos were used again and again without paying the teaching artist again. So I do have one example of one teaching artist contract that I can share if you email me, that is about how you build in for video components. I tried to get pro bono lawyers to write a generic contract, and they would not do that because it's different in every single state. So what I have in lieu of that is one single teaching artist that she shared with us example that has been lawyerly vetted for her state. Because we're talking about lawyerly things, there's so many extra provisions around that. But I just wanted to let you know why it's important for us, because teaching artists, we need to get paid. We need to ensure that our folks are taken care of. And the NEA, the number one call that the head of the NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts, who is a Trump appointee, the number one call she got was about teaching artists. What about teaching artists? So that shows that people are paying attention, that it is important. So the other thing that we do, of course, is professional development. These are images back in the day of when we taught this live with people touching around each other close. That's not happening now, obviously, but we have taught professional developments live in different cities on a variety of topics, from the basic of classroom management to multiple intelligence to this workshop on the left. This one is a day-long workshop on multiple intelligence and teaching artists. And this one is a week-long on social emotional learning and teaching artistry. So we do all different types of PDs live back in the day, and someday we'll get to that again. Right now, what we're doing is doing them virtually. So here's one we did just, I think, a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. COVID time makes time elastic. This one was about different creative online learning tools that you could be able to utilize. And we did it through the lens of being an equitable educator and looking at how to incorporate anti-racist work into your teaching artistry. And that was co-taught by myself and Victor Sawyer, who's the co-chair of Teaching Artists Guild, and Giselle Pereña, who is a amazing teaching artist from Luna Dance. We try and do most workshops collaboratively with artists of different disciplines. So again, I'm theater, Victor is music, and Giselle is dance, because we want the multiple disciplines that teaching artists bring to the picture. So these are some things coming up. I actually have the dates on these but I just got them. So I will tell you, we are doing 3 very specific ones just on the road to advocacy. Starting in January, there will be 3 back-to-back on the Mondays in the last 3 Mondays in January. One is on advocacy for self, and then the next is advocacy for field, and then the third is advocacy for justice. So this came out of an article that Jeff Poland, who used to run the arts education program for American for the Arts and now is at Creative Generation. This came out of an article that he wrote for TAG's monthly blog on advocacy. And we got so much feedback on that he's taking that into a 3-part series along with a bunch of other BIPOC teaching artists to really showcase how definitely you need that advocacy for yourself, but for our field to grow so that we can help each other. And also so because we understand our work is geared around social justice. So we invite you to those. We are creating all of our workshops on this sliding scale. So if you cannot afford, you don't have to pay. If you can afford to pay, we're asking for $20 per session so that that money goes directly to those teaching artists. And if you could pay for somebody else, that is really helpful too. After that, like this series that you're in right now, we are doing youth-led workshops, and we are doing a series of them, 5 of them, that are all BIPOC youth-led. Each of them are geared toward really specific topics, and these are with youth that are from all over the country, from Memphis and Seattle and the Bay Area and Chicago and Minneapolis. And each of them are geared toward topics that are of interest to our young people. And so we're really excited to help bring those to the front. I will say, just to point out, that almost all of them are for any teaching artist. The one on Afrofuturism is very specifically geared for African-American teaching artists. For others that are not African-American, we will provide a specific handout that you can be able to provide to your African-American students very specifically. But this was intentionally by and for African-American teaching artists. And all the rest are for all of us to look at how we can really meet our young people where they're at and speak to them in a way that makes sense to them. So the other knowledge sharing that we do is this monthly blog. And we used to, some of you might know, we used to do a quarterly magazine and publish it. But in our time of shelter in place, trying to do a quarterly something when everything changes every day was just impossible. As teaching artists, we know being flexible is a critical component. So what we did was create this monthly blog, and it's based around issues. One of the things that we have been doing, that we just started actually this last month in November, was trying to upturn this monthly heritage idea. So as opposed to doing kind of a Native American heritage thing, instead we got perspectives from Indigenous teaching artists. So you hear really specifically how teaching artists are incorporating their Native American identity into their work. So this was last month's. I think it's still up because we're running a little behind. And in a couple of days, we will publish the one that is around artivism. And we have some artists from all over the world that are utilizing their teaching artistry very specifically to work in an activist mindset. So that's going to be published just a couple of days. If you have an article that you are interested in sharing with us, please reach out to us. We also have a regional section on our website that you can post anytime you have something you want to share that is happening, you can share that, and that goes out. And if you want to do an article, please, reach out to me too. We think that's really important. The collective impact of us sharing with each other really makes such a difference. It's quite a joy being able to learn from our colleagues. The one other thing I forgot to say about professional development is on our website, we also have a whole database of all the different professional developments for teaching artists that exist all over the country. And I will say that list is evolving and changing during COVID times, where I think in prior times, only 3 of those offered online PDs, and now almost all of them have moved to online learning. So it's actually a great opportunity in shelter in place to really, freshen up your professional development skills. And I will say, I have been involved in some amazing one, like making traditional Navajo ceremony skirts that, you're sewing it all together. There has been some really lovely online teaching artist moments. We will also be developing events page that will list all of those. That's coming up in about a month. So another element of knowledge sharing that we do is we have this social justice database. So you can go on here and you can actually just search. So I've been doing a lot of presentations all over, and one of the big things that comes to me after the presentations is, can you provide anti-racist curriculum or curriculum that's for white teaching artists working in non-white communities? And actually, I have been sending people to the Centering the Work because this is a curated database. There's a whole team of folks. If you look at our National Advisory Committee, there are amazing teaching artists from all over the country that are part of that. And we really work hard on keeping this up to date. So you could actually just type in here, especially in the example I gave you, you could type in there white and a bunch of really new, amazing curriculum will come up for white educators that are teaching anti-racist work. So, and if you have something to share and add to this, again, it's the collective impact. Please share it with us so that we can share it with other folks. So we also, I hope some of you had a chance to look at this, but like I was talking about how we're flexible, we're meeting the times, we're trying to be where we're at. So we really, when COVID hit, boom, right away, March 13th, we did this COVID resources for teaching artists and pulled together groups of people from all over the country to present this webinar. And if you scroll through this page on our website, there's all these different COVID resources, labor laws, wellness, emergency funding, all different elements that can help you kind of navigate this time. And if we are missing something, let me know. So what are we doing right now? Right now, we are working with different regional-based teaching artist organizations. We compiled a list of them that are all over the country. And we have been reaching out to them and holding listening tours. And in the Bay Area, Indy has been amazing about doing that with the Teaching Artist Think Tank. We are gathering information to try and find out what teaching artists need so that we can pull that together and address that really specifically. In February, we will be holding a national event that will be the first of its kind, that will be hosted by the National Endowment for the Arts, the Federal Department of Education, Arts Education Partnership, and the Hewlett Foundation with Teaching Artists Guild to showcase and highlight teaching artists. So we want to hear from you as we build up to that. So we want to hear what you need and what you want so that we can be able to help create this gathering of teaching artists from all over the country. So I threw a ton of things out there to you all. I wanted to stop sharing and just kind of find out what you're thinking, what your thoughts are. And I'm going to pause my share. I'm going to stop my share so I can see all you beautiful faces. And just find out what questions you have, what comments you may have about what I was talking about. What do you see happening in the field of teaching artists? What do you need? Anybody have some thoughts? Or Darcy and Sophia, you too.
Well, thank you, Miko. That was a lot of information. And quite honestly, I'm blown away by your website. There's so much information on there. It's incredible. I feel like it'll take a while for me to go through everything and soak it all in. Thank
you. I'm wondering, as we think about this, and I see that Virginia wrote, Alexandra wrote, make change happen, and Virginia would put, we want change. I'm wondering what type of change you all want specifically. I know you're reading them out from our manifesto, which we call our Teaching Artist Manifesto, but I'm wondering what specific change are you all interested in? If you all want to unmute yourselves and have a conversation, that would be great.
Hey, Miko.
Hi.
Yeah, so first I just want to say this is also inspiring to me. I lost a lot of contracts when the pandemic hit and have tried to make some things happen, and it's been challenging getting the PPE that we need to run camps and things like that. So just seeing what you're doing and hearing all these resources has been so inspiring, and just made me feel like I can get up and really do some more things for the youth in our county. And then as far as change, really interested in the anti-racist curriculum, especially teaching as a white educator. I'm trying to make change to end racism, and specifically in my school, we do sit on a line directly between Wiyot and Yurok land, and that's been given a lot of acknowledgement at our school site, which I'm thankful for. So I've just been working on finding connections with more Native American artists, tribes, and just trying to figure out curriculum that's culturally responsible and competent for sharing with my students.
Love that. Yes. Okay, I have multiple responses. I hope the rest of you are thinking about your next questions and what you want to throw out there. One, Virginia, is email me a follow-up, because I actually, at my last job, which was at Youth and Arts for over a decade, I created with Eddie Madrill, who you might know is an amazing Bay Area Indigenous artist, brilliant. We created together a workshop for educators on how you teach Indigenous, how you teach about Indigenous practices when you are not Indigenous. And we actually created a study guide, a reading list that by Indigenous authors. So I could send you that whole link. It's really cool. We have a whole study guide. He taught a session that was so lovely. He also is one of the 4 artists that was profiled in that Insight that I was showcasing. So our monthly blog, I think I forgot to say, our monthly blog is called Insight, like as in insight, and also Insight as in SIGHT, eyes, and CIT as in make change. So Eddie Madrill was one of those teaching artists in there. And he did a great workshop about, for instance, cornhusk dolls, what most people call cornhusk dolls, and how many people teach that around Thanksgiving. But for him and for Indigenous folks, it's spirit beings. And how you teach them is very specific. So he was showcasing, and we actually have a study guide for that, showcasing how you teach that respectfully while uplifting the culture and celebrating the culture. And what is okay to teach, like hoop dancing is a sacred form. And so he will show how you use hoop dance and how tricky it is, because of course, like anybody who's good at something, when he does the hoop dance and does the eagle, it looks so easy because it's so beautiful, like anybody who's great at something. But when you try it, it's really hard just to put 2 together. So hoop dancing is sacred. So you're not going to teach that. I'm not going to teach that. But what can we teach? How do we teach it? How do we appreciate it? How do we also, both showcase it, show that it's a living tradition, that it is carrying on, that it is evolving, but that we aren't the ones to evolve it as a non-Indigenous person. So I can send you that as a one thing, just very specifically, that has already been created about Indigenous practices. That's one. The other is put yourself on the map so that you can get work that's not just in your area, right? I really encourage you all to do that. And the losing the contracts, that was huge. That was a really big thing for all of us. And this is what I was trying to explain to funders that are not getting it, that suddenly a lot of teaching artists were just boom, out of work. And the video thing, that was deep, because suddenly everybody had these videos and they're using them again and again without giving any compensation to the teaching artist. I mean, even major organizations, I won't name names, but it's a big one in the US, one of the biggest is asking for teaching artists to submit their curriculum and a video for $700. And that big organization would own that. That's not okay. $700 to make a video, to have your whole curriculum, to have somebody else own it, not okay. And as a baseline, everybody should know that you always own your own curriculum. You always have to include in that contract that you are the co-owner of your own curriculum. Even if they are publishing it and putting their name on it as an organization, you are the owner. It is your intellectual property, but make sure you have that in your contract. And Virginia, yes, in terms of go onto the database and go in there and look and put in very specifically, as I was saying, white or anti-racist, and a bunch of things will pop up.
That's awesome. I'll definitely talk to you, Miko. I appreciate it. And I guess I would have one more follow-up question.
Please.
You and I both worked for the California Alliance Creating Arts Now Communities, and I'm just wondering if you're still doing that, and if you are or not, even if it's through this Teaching Artists Guild, how you're advocating for students now. I'm just finding that really difficult because we're not able to congregate or really interact with parents very directly. Like getting parents to respond to emails and things like that has been challenging. So I'm just wondering what strategies you're using to advocate for students to have equitable access to the arts right now.
Okay, so many deep things. So Yes, I knew I recognized your beautiful face. Thank you for pointing that out to me. And it's a small community. We all know each other. I sit on the policy council for the Alliance. So in that way, I'm still involved with the Arts Alliance. In terms of running one specific Arts Now community, I don't do that anymore. In terms of direct connect with parents, it really has to be, it's so different. As you know, I've always said that every school is its own planet with its own culture, its own leader, and the leader is not, rarely is the principal. It could be the janitor, it could be, the PTA head, it could be a kick-ass teacher, but you have to figure out who is the leader of that planet, school, and really reach out to them about the protocols of reaching out to parents, because everybody is so different. In terms of advocating for students, for me, that's a lifelong journey. I work for TAG Halftime. The other part of my work is as a consultant. And this past year, I've been working with SRI on doing an update of the Unfinished Canvas. Some of you might know that. That's the seminal arts education study that was done over 11 years ago. And it looked at the disparities in equity in arts education. And so we've been doing a reboot of that that's been going on right now. So I think about 60% of the principals across the state of California filled that out. And then I worked on another study with SRI that was specifically about systems-involved youth, particularly incarcerated youth, and the lack of arts education that those students are getting. And what we found is 70% of kids that are involved in the system, so not just incarcerated kids, but kids that are in foster care, in an unhoused situation, that are all systems impacted youth, that are in, the alternative ed, the county community schools, 70% of those kids are not getting arts education. So it is just a huge gap. And as you are probably aware, the bulk of those students are Black and Brown and Indigenous students, of course. So the inequities that exist that we're seeing laid bare because of COVID are just really clear in these studies that were coming out regardless of COVID. Now it's even worse. So that was my long answer to the yes, communicating, still advocating for young people, finding the gatekeepers to be able to reach out to those students. And also, I don't know if you're working as an individual teaching artist at one organization or at specific, are you working, Virginia, on your own or at multiple sites or through arts organization?
Right now, I'm mostly working for a school district. And as you said, it's mostly making videos for kids in an asynchronous learning environment, which is not my favorite. And like you said, basically doing 2 grade levels per video. Like I'm not getting the hours that I got before the funding from the PTO and for our school was cut. So I'm basically doing the same amount of work for half the pay this year, just for the sake of, having some work.
Yeah, that is so, generally I've been advising people to, of course, let those organizations know that it actually takes more time, more effort, more focused energy to create the videos than it did to go into the classroom.
Yes,
So they should be
absolutely.
paying you. So they should be paying you the same, if not more, than when you were actually in the classroom.
Right.
So
well, I think that's where Miko,
that
my advocacy question comes in, is because funding has been cut from so many places. Even many of the contracts I had were funded through grant funding, like, for example, our county library. I was doing an art and reading program with them. But a lot of that funding's been cut. So I have found that advocating for arts education during this time has been met with even more resistance, if that was imaginable, than before the pandemic. Because the response is always that there aren't dollars for it. And so I've been trying to think of creative ways and have been successful in some cases of trying to offer programs that don't take a lot of money. But yeah, just with the financial economic situation, I'm finding it super challenging right now.
Yeah, it is really tricky. One of the things I would say is, okay, you make me think about adding, I did this workshop recently for the state of Oklahoma on art, on how arts education addresses trauma. And I utilized the ACEs test. I don't know if you all are, which is the adverse childhood experiences, and all the teachers took it beforehand. And anyway, my point of that is, right now we are all living in trauma, every single one of us, because of the shelter in place, because of the uprising, which has been needed and in place, right? Because of all these things, we are all living in trauma. And arts education and teaching artistry is the best way to deal with that trauma, because we can be flexible, we can meet the needs of the students where they're at. In so many of the places where I have checked in with classroom teachers and asked, are they teaching about emotions? Are they teaching about feelings? And I cannot even count how many teachers said to me, no, I'm leaving that to the parents. Like, the parents are overwhelmed and traumatized. So being able to look for many different pockets to be able to get funding, that's one of those things. And there's some on our website. There's not enough. I will say there's not enough. We are working on that. I mean, what we are trying to do is build up the asset map and attain funding so that we could give directly to teaching artists, so that you can do that work in your communities. I wish I could say that that's done, and we're doing that right now. Right now, it is about the self-advocacy and with the kind of tools that we could provide you to be able to do that. I wish I had a better answer for you. Yeah, and every community is really different, right? So some are having their community foundations or their city offering additional funds for teaching artists to be able to do this work. So I'd say look into your locale. And I would also say do send emails and do reach outs to, I mean, it's really quick to do an email to the Alliance and to, to say, will you do direct funding to teaching artists, and to your members of Congress. That stuff makes a difference. I know people are really jaded about politics, and I get it. Me too. Every other day it changes. But I will say many, many, many moons ago, I worked for a congresswoman, at the time, Barbara Boxer, and I will never forget her running into the office saying, how many letters do we have on this subject? I can't even remember the subject, but somebody said, we have 5 letters. And she said, great, give me those. She took those 5 letters and she went on the floor of the Capitol and said, my constituents feel. And I remember, I was so young at the time, but I really remember thinking, whoa, 5 people is how her constituents in all of Northern California feel about a topic. And it is the same today. The fact that the NEA director said, I want to hear from teaching artists because people called in and asked her about it, that is why it is important to, you know, it's so easy now. You send a little email, Governor Newsom, go onto their website. Make sure teaching artists are taken care of. We are addressing the needs of students that are traumatized, that are left behind, that are in their homes. Will you support teaching artists? So we are trying to do that on a policy level. So we actually helped to write some national policy that went to the Biden administration, so that you will notice, hopefully, we've been trying to create a new WPA so that artists can be employed, and we made sure to include teaching artists in every single bit of that language. So we're trying to do it on the national level, but it's up to individual teaching artists to write those notes and say, me, I count, I'm important, and we are a thing. We are a body of people that are important and can contribute to the wellness of our society that is really messed up right now. Do that. I wish I had this is the answer.
No, this has all been great.
Virginia.
This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. And just inspiring to hear from you and your amazing career and insight.
Yeah, thank you. I'm like inspired to write letters, and I'm not even a teaching artist.
Actually, Darcy, to not be a teaching artist and to write is really important. To write as a member of our society and say, these people are important and this is why. And, or, you know, for me, not just for me as the shy kid who learned to really speak through theater, or as my, you know, one of my daughters who through Youth Speaks is now a writer. The other daughter is, you know, a filmmaker because she was in Destiny Company, right? They have, those roots are deep for our people. So speak to it so it makes sense to you. Nate, oh my God, dude, throw in a big old question. Could you talk about anti-capitalist? So wait, how much time do I have? An anti-capitalist arts education? Whew. I could talk about that all day, and I feel like I have kind of been talking about that already. So the work that we're talking about with the indigenous populations, that is anti-capitalist work, right? When we're talking about even BIPOC-led youth workshops, that is anti-capitalist work. When we're talking about adultism, that is anti-capitalist work. I feel like so much of the stuff that's on that social justice database is working toward that. Does it overtly call itself anti-capitalist? I don't think it does. Maybe one that I can think of does do that. But it is. I mean, the root of this is we all have to be doing this work to broaden whose stories we want to share, whose stories we want to amplify and uplift. If we are moving away from the traditional hierarchical, patriarchal, capitalist structure, which is based in cisgendered white male privilege, it has to be pulling that stuff apart so that when we're teaching theater, for instance, we're not just teaching Shakespeare, which is beautiful, and I love it, and I love those words. But we're also, when we talk about traditional theater, that we're talking about including, you know, Kyogen and No, and, you know, Bonraku, and shadow puppetry, right? That we're talking about what does tradition mean, and the language that we're using, that we're thoughtful in making sure that we're having everybody as a piece of that, that the traditional theater is rooted in storytelling, which is in every single culture. And how does that play itself in a different way? And I think right now the next insight that we're putting out is on artivism. And that is all anti-capitalist in its structure. So one of the teaching artists we're doing is a teaching artist who has been working in Hawaii. Actually, happens to be my daughter too, I will say that, who has been working with indigenous elders that are using traditional hula and storytelling and chanting to be able to prevent the building of the largest telescope in the world on their sacred mountain. And it is trying to, how do you deal with that, is that TMT, this huge telescope, is an international telescope being funded by money from all around the world that is being built on top of a sacred mountain that holds all the pure water in the islands. So they have connected with water protectors from all over. So they were in, with the Dakotas in the pipeline, right? They're all working together to realize that this goes across sectors, it goes across continents, it goes across boundaries, because it is about protecting sacred land. And I look at all of those people that are up there doing, that are building an encampment and, standing in solidarity with people all over the world. They are teaching artists. They are there because how they are teaching their method, how they are sharing what they're doing is through film. It's through singing, it's through chanting, it's through storytelling, it is through history and connections. So to me, that is all part of this anti-capitalist structure. Each of them are folks that are trying to make change in a different way. Another person that we are focusing on is William Estrella, who is in Chicago, and he is a teaching artist that has been, even during the pandemic, going out into the streets and building tents with tables and a printing press so that people can, on the fly, create their own Black Lives Matter t-shirts, posters, flyers, right there in the streets, and all masked up, with all the protective gear, but recognizing that the need is so deep that for him, it is essential to be out there doing this, that it is about being a muckraker, inciting that change. To me, that is also anti-capitalist education, because he is realizing that how you spread that message is by creating this imagery that is powerful. I mean, think about how in this last year, just how Black Lives Matter has changed in terms of acceptability. When you have acceptability, right? When you have Target and these big corporations, capitalist corporations that are co-opting teaching artists, social justice folks, terminology and imagery, that has been a change-making factor. So it might start on the ground, it might start, on the bottom, with all of us, the groundswell of all of us working together to build so that it will have a cultural impact, to be able to make change in an anti-capitalist way. Nate, that's the beginning of my answer. Do you have a follow-up question based on that? Or do anybody else have questions? I think we have 3 minutes left, right? Anything else? I'd love to hear what you all are doing, how you define yourselves as teaching artists. Oh, suddenly my internet connection went a little woo-woo, but it must be because we were talking about anti-capitalism. It heard me. How do you define yourselves and see yourself as a teaching artist? Do you see yourself as part of a greater collective? If you don't want to share your screen and talk, throw it into the chat. Do you see yourself as part of a bigger collective? I mean, I think one of the things that many people have said is, oh gosh, teaching artistry, it's like herding cats. We're all over the place. Everybody has a different way. Everybody's doing it in their own way, and everybody thinks their own way is the best. Yes, and as a theater person, yes, and we need to speak as one voice so that we can have a power. A couple of blogs ago, we did one on the unionizations that's happening for different teaching artists. We know that at Lincoln Center, their teaching artists have been unionized for years, but they were the first one, and they're big and they can have the infrastructure to do that. And honestly, musicians have been at the forefront of this because there's already music unions that exist. But I did this interview with the folks from Old Town Music in Chicago, and they have formed a teaching artistry union with the Illinois Federation of Teachers, which I thought was so interesting. And now Swallow Hill in Denver, Colorado is doing this as well. So there is a groundswell of folks that are pulling together to create unions, starting with musicians, but I think it's something interesting to watch for field building as we move forward. Thank you all for joining me today. Oh, Alexandra, yes, being a teaching artist can be isolating. So this is actually from the listening tours, the preliminary stuff that we've been getting from these listening tours that have been happening all on the East Coast and in Chicago and in the Bay Area, but I'm trying to get more places to add to that. But the three things that everybody has been saying, one is we need money/jobs, same thing, right? Number two is we need community. We need to talk to each other. And number three is we need anti-racist education. So we invite you to join us in each of those things. Put your name, your face, your being on our map so you can get work and eventually get individual funding. Two, join a local community. If you don't have one, start one. But y'all are mostly in the Bay Area, you got a great one. And three, join us so that we can together raise our voice and find information on our database so that you can learn more about anti-racist curriculum. So we're hoping to address those things. If there are more, let us know. Okay, excellent. I'm going to throw it back to Darcy to close us out. I appreciate all of you for the hard work and the passion that you are doing out there in the community. Yay.
Yay, thanks everybody. And thank you so much, Miko. That was like such a rich presentation and really glad that we had the chance to have a conversation afterwards. Just wanted to give a couple of shout outs here before we close out. Be sure to take a look at the Youth Arts Summit Gallery. We also have even more events as part of the Youth Arts Summit. There's one this afternoon that sounds really interesting about healing through the spoken word, and this one's led by youth, so that should be a good one. And then of course also please check out the culmination of the entire Youth Arts Summit, the Youth Arts Celebration, which is on Friday from 4 to 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. So thanks everyone for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.